Well, good morning or afternoon, Mr. Powierski. We're here today with Ms. Elaine Powierski, Council Member for the City of St. Mary's, and she is spearheading the discussions for to assist with some public transportation.
Correct.
Means that we already currently have in the city, but we're trying to kind of redefine what that really looks like.
Or supplement.
Or supplement.
Yes.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is just give us a little bit of history on how this came about.
Okay. Yeah, I think the way it came about is probably as interesting as the bus route itself. But we were involved in master planning for the city of St. Mary's starting a couple of years ago, and as part of that process, we conducted a lot of interviews with individuals, and groups, and we also did a lot of just group meetings to talk about what the concerns were of the citizens of St. Mary's and what some of the enhancements they would like to see, because we really wanted to make this master plan something that was coming from the citizens of the community. And I believe we were able to accomplish that. But in talking with the different segments of the community, we talked to the group who are possibly more struggling economically in the community, and there were a number of needs and concerns that they addressed. But as we went through the needs and concerns, everything seemed to lead back to the lack of transportation, whether it be inability to attend classes, to get to resources, to get part-time jobs. But everything always seemed to stem from the fact that there was not enough transportation to get to the things that are available in the county. And the group we worked with on this issue was called Every Voice Matters. And it was pretty much open to anyone in the public who wanted to join. And they really were the ones who digested everything that they said and came up with, well, perhaps we should look at working on transportation, since it seems to have a thread through everything else that we need. And the nice thing is the group of citizens not only identified the issue, but they became part of the planning for the solution, which is, I think, going to make this project much, much better than rather if some individuals, a handful of individuals, sat back and implemented what they thought would work. Mm-hmm. So the community, a few members stepped up to be part of a committee, and then that committee started identifying locations that they felt individuals needed to get to. And of course we identified much more than what is in our initial attempt, but then we refined it down to a point where the route was doable. We could make 2 loops in the morning, 2 loops in the afternoon, and it would be a much more manageable way to implement it, because we are very much considering this a pilot.
Okay. I got a few questions then. The 2 loops in the morning, and where exactly where would that route be? Okay. Where would it start and where would it end?
It will start in the Pines Apartments, and from there the next stop will be in the Cumberland Oaks apartment complex. From there, they're testing the route, so there could be a slight deviation, but from that point they're considering going to the Salvation Army, which not only has the stores available, but they also have a lot of resources and classes available. From there it would head over to the VA clinic over in Kings Bay Plaza. From there it would go to the Winn-Dixie in St. Mary's. Then the next stop would be by the Walmart Center. And then the following stop, and the last stop on the trail, would be the Southeast Georgia Hospital System, and the medical pavilion is where they're thinking they would stop, right in front of the medical pavilion. And then they would loop back around and start over at the Pines Apartments. So actually the Pines Apartments would be the first and last stop every day.
Okay.
And they're thinking that this route will take approximately between getting to the location and loading and unloading approximately an hour and a half. So it would start at 9 and probably be repeated at 10:30 and then start again at 1 and probably be repeated again. You know, the actual times and the actual stops, by the time we do the flyer, we'll know all the times for each stop, so that it can be very dependable, very predictable. So if someone leaving point A to go to the last point at the hospital would know what time they could be expected to arrive there, so they could establish appointments accordingly, or blood work, or any tests they may need done.
And how long are the stops?
About 5 minutes, with a break for the bus at lunchtime.
Now these buses, these are going to be through, these are the Coastal Regional coaches?
It'll be one of the 10-passenger Coastal Regional coaches, and we have a name for it now. It's called the Camden Connector, because Coastal Regional Commission wants to stress that this does not take away from any services that they currently provide to the community. Their on-demand transportation is still available as it always was. So this is a secondary service that is being implemented as a test.
Okay. And so how are people going to know that, how are they going to distinguish between the Camden Connector versus the Coastal Regional coach?
They'll look the same, but it'll be that the Camden Connector follows a specific route. Okay. It'll be one 10-passenger bus with the capability of holding one wheelchair passenger in addition to that. And it'll follow a fixed route. It can't deviate from that route. It'll have to stick strictly to that route so that it's predictable for individuals.
Okay, so the bus itself is not going to change. It'll still look like the Coastal Regional coach bus, but people will just have to kind of be aware of that route and those stops on it.
Correct. And once we get the times finalized for each stop, I'll deliver signs to the locations that they can put in their window that say the Camden Connection stops here at these times.
Okay.
So we'll supply the businesses and we'll talk to the managers so that they know that this is happening. And we do have a firm start date now. The pilot will be formally implemented on March 1st, but it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the first Saturday of each month. So the first route date will actually be Friday, the March 2nd, and then they'll be on Saturday, because that's the first Saturday of the month. It'll be the Saturday route also. And that is only one Saturday a month, but every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Okay. And so I know you and I had kind of a small side discussion as to, is this going to cost any more money to the taxpayers? I know the Coastal Regional Coach is funded through the Coastal Regional Commission, and that's set up by state law. So what are some possible contributions from the city, or if there will be any contributions from the city taxpayers to fund the transportation?
Actually, the nice thing about this project is that they're putting it in without any additional cost to the county whatsoever. They had the access to an extra vehicle that they could use for this that won't impact the rest of the service. There'll be a $3 per ride charge. We're also in the process of implementing a voucher system where individuals can buy vouchers in advance, so they don't have to have $3 cash every time that they get on the bus. They can use a voucher instead, or for some organizations who may want to give assistance to their clients for transportation, they would have those available to purchase for $3, once again, a ride each way.
Do the local, have y'all spoken with the leadership that kind of deals with the elderly in the community that are still quite active themselves and can actually use this transportation? What kind of groups have you spoken with about that?
We've had public meetings about this, but we haven't really pinpointed any individual groups per se. But we did talk to what's called the Senior Authority, or also known as the Hospital Authority, to see if they would be willing to purchase some vouchers that would be available to senior citizens who live in St. Mary's. And it appears that they may be willing to do that. And if they do, then the program would be administered through the Salvation Army, who would distribute the vouchers based on the criteria that they establish.
Okay, so there's going to be, so it looks like there's going to be a separate organization that kind of manages the voucher system. Is that what I'm understanding?
At this point in time, what the City of St. Mary's has agreed to is that we will sell the vouchers in the water department in St. Mary's on behalf of CRC. And so, for example, if the Senior Authority wanted to purchase 100 vouchers to provide for seniors, they would just come into the water department. And the vouchers will be numbered so that we know then, we have a tracking system, and that we know that the vouchers 1 through 300, let's say, were purchased by the Hospital Authority on the behalf of St. Mary's citizens.
So there's going to be a partnership between the Hospital Authority to create the voucher?
No. The city has agreed to pay the cost of printing for the first 1,000 vouchers.
So the city's going to pay for the first 1,000
vouchers.
Now this is
just not for the voucher itself,
but
the printing. Right? It's like a ticket. It'll be about the size of a business card, but it'll be in sequential numbering order so that we can track how many are sold and who is purchasing them, and that way too we can make sure that money is transferred to the CRC on a periodic basis.
So people will come. Ideally, people would come here to buy the vouchers.
Correct.
Okay. What if they're not able to get here to buy the vouchers? Are there going to be other places where the vouchers can be sold?
Well, we haven't worked those details out. If we find a need, in fact, this whole pilot is an experiment. So as we see needs, as we need to adjust the program, we have the flexibility to do that.
Okay.
We had a meeting yesterday with the mobility manager from CRC and the supervisor for the drivers. And he probably will be the one most in touch with, it looks like one other stop could be used. We're not getting much traffic at this stop, so we can adjust the program to make it successful.
Is there going to be like I guess a electronic or social type of medium that's going to allow people to go to a website to kind of read more about this and the route?
We're hoping that we'll have the information loaded on the St. Mary's, official St. Mary's website, and probably also, if possible, on the PSA website.
Okay.
So individuals could go to those websites and see if the route is the same as they initially heard, or if some adjustments have been made to it. One area where I'm hoping that we can consider making adjustments in the future based on usage is that when talking to the classes that are held at the local college for GED training and all of that, they have a problem with transportation getting individuals there. And we're hoping that maybe at some point we can extend that route to include that location and be able to get individuals to take classes that are offered free, but they just don't have the transportation to access them.
Now, I think I heard at the city council or town hall meeting the other evening that y'all are going to be considered one of the first rural areas to have this pilot.
Correct.
Or do you know of any other rural areas that are considering something similar?
Well, I think there's a lot of interest out there. Our local coastal regional commission already had a call from one city who wanted to talk about this because somehow they had gotten the word about it and they were interested. There's another woman who works with a nonprofit in Savannah who wants to come down and have lunch with me next week just to talk about how we got there, because she's interested in, she works with the groups that try to keep handicapped individuals as mobile as possible and as serviced as possible so they can live in their homes. And she was interested in seeing how something like that came about too. So I think that the interest will be there. So I think it might be something, if it's successful here, perhaps the other regional commissions would consider implementing something in their region too.
Assuming this becomes successful here in Camden, have you kind of looked down the road a little bit as to what kind of grants that are possibly connected to something like this for rural areas?
Well, a lot of the grants right now are rather rigid about what they're allowed to give. They're not allowed to use money for fixed routes. But CRC was hoping that if there might be later on more flexibility in that grant money, if they can prove that it really is a service to the community.
Okay.
So they're hoping that down the line this will be an example of how some grant money could be earmarked for something a little different, because not everything in the same community works the same.
Exactly.
That would give a little more flexibility. Right now the major funding goes to the on-demand coaches. But that doesn't work for everybody.
And so really I'm going back to what we discussed. So really this came about because there was a need, number one, and then there was actual vehicles that could actually be used for this.
Correct.
So were those vehicles just not being used very much, or?
Well, it seemed to me, and I don't know enough about this, you'd actually have to talk to Coastal Regional Commission. They actually purchased back one of the coaches that was being used for the on-demand from GDOT, because somehow GDOT is also involved in that grant money. So in order to make this happen, they actually have to purchase back one of the vehicles in order to get control of that vehicle to use it in another way.
Okay, so they had to purchase that back to assume that.
Yes, and I asked yesterday in the meeting how we will know if it's successful.
Right.
How will we measure success? And the supervisor of the driver says he felt that if we even have 13 trips a day, that may be successful. That may prove to be a measure. And we really do anticipate much more than that.
Okay.
Because it is a 10-passenger. So hopefully between the first two stops, we might pick up at each stop, 10 passengers. They'll know where they've dropped them off, and in the next route, they'll anticipate picking them back up.
Okay.
So I think 13 round trips they're thinking would be a measurement, a good measurement for success.
And so the first date is the first day of trying to get this going is around March 1st.
And the first, because it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the first day will actually be Friday the 2nd,
Okay.
and then Saturday the 3rd.
Okay. Well, that sounds very interesting for our community here. I think that will definitely be something people want to read about and learn about. Absolutely. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
And thank you for allowing us to get the word out on it.
Absolutely. Thank you.